Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm Michael LeBlanc, your host. The Voice of Retail is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada, and it's presented by Hale, a performance marketing partner trusted by brands like ASICS, Sage, and Orange Theory to scale with focus and impact. Sean, welcome back to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm great, Michael. How are you doing?
Fantastic. All the better for having you on the mic, talk about retail and Black Friday specifically. So thanks for taking time and what's, I'm sure, a busy week for you to join me on the mic.
Yeah, this is like Christmas morning for us at Moneris Data Services. A few weeks early when we get the Black Friday data. So it's retailers are this is their Super Bowl and we're here to measure it.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for squeezing me in. Like some of my interviews, I do weeks in advance. This I'm doing a day in advance because I wanted freshly baked data from you guys. So appreciate you carving me out a bit of time.
Still steaming. Coming out of the oven.
So let's not assume everybody knows who you are and what you do for a living. I think you've got a new improved role since the last time you were on the pod. So who are you and what do you do for a living?
Yeah, so I work for Moneris, specifically our data services division. I look after sales and marketing, and we began researching and focusing on consumer spending trends at the very outset of the pandemic, and we've grown our team here at Moneris Data Services to it's a little over 15 of us now. So we went from 1 to 15 over the last 5 years. So it's a really fun corner of the business to be in, and really interesting, especially when we can support meaningful research related to retail. Yeah,
I remember the nascent days when you just kind of putting a toe in the water and kind of getting going. You were an evangelist in the organization for what you could do with the data and the demand that could be there, and the interest from the retail community and probably others as well. So let's not. I mean, everybody knows the name Moneris, but maybe people kind of forget your scope and scale and how you get your data and how much of data actually flows through your network. So. Can you share that to just bring everybody up to speed, make sure they all know how impressive the data is?
Yeah, so we're owned by RBC and BMO, Canada's two biggest banks. And I mention that all the time when somebody asks me about, Moneris Data Services, where does our data come from, is it reliable? And I mention that because everybody needs to understand how careful and risk-averse banks are inherently.
Right.
So what that means is that we are held to a significantly higher standard than most data providers because of the risk aversion of those banks. And that's a really good thing. That means that the data that we provide is both reliable and trusted as a result of that reliability, because we don't take chances.
Yeah.
We could be doing so much more with our data, but we don't, because we want to be very safe. We want to be very reliable, and we want to obviously stay well within the boundaries of
privacy and
privacy and sharing of data. So the data that we offer is always highly aggregated. Composition is all card brands, so Visa, MasterCard, Amex, etc. From all issuing banks. So, that's not just CIBC, BMO, RBC, but that's also the issuing banks that might issue, like Citibank, Citibank MasterCards or MNBA credit cards. Those basically, if you tap it or swipe it or insert it into a Moneris terminal, we will process it, and we will see that transaction, and it will be included in the aggregate results that we see. The other component to our data is debit. And in Canada, debit makes up close to 50% of all transactions in Canada.
Really?
Canadians love
50%?
Debit. Yeah.
Really?
And it's even higher than that in some categories, like quick serve restaurants.
Sure.
So that's a really important component of our data, and an important research asset. Because if you're a researcher and or just an interested party in retail and you want to understand what is going on Black Friday, for example, we are literally pulling out our sample of the Moneris sample, which is about 30% of all transactions in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
That is a sample that's spread across all card brands, all issuing banks, credit and debit. It's not just one card brand that is going to have a brand bias associated with it. And by that, I mean, an American Express cardholder is a very different demographic than someone who is using debit to pay for everything, or MasterCard. So it's a very reliable sample.
Now give me a 30% of all transactions. Do you have a sense of, or can you share a sense of order of magnitude? How many transactions a year? Like, what does that mean?
Oh, I can do better than that. I'll tell you per second. We process up to 1,000 transactions a second.
Wow.
So that's peak. That's what we'll get at it. That's what we'll get to. In the holiday season. So
that's a lot of horsepower. That's a lot of horsepower and a lot of data. And I'm just so excited that you guys are at the point where you, as you say, you're no cowboys. You're sharing data responsibly, but there's not much substitute for what you're sharing here. Some of the platforms come out with their numbers, but there's so many different caveats. Did they grow their business? Are we seeing that in the number? And so it's great. There's probably a little bit of that. And you maybe you've got a few more terminals than you did last year, maybe a few less. So there's probably a little bit of that in your data, right?
No. I mean, you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that. I didn't know you were going to tee me up for that. But it's that's a really important point that you make, and that what we do with our data is, and this terminology will be very familiar to folks in retail, is we use same store methodology.
Okay, cool.
So when we release results, whether those are for our clients or publicly, like Black Friday results, it's same store. So if that merchant location, not just the merchant, but the merchant location, like we've got merchants with thousands and thousands of locations.
Sure.
If that merchant location, if that terminal at that merchant location was not active in both reporting periods, i.e., November the 4th, 2024 versus November the 4th, 2025, if it's not active in both of those reporting periods, we pull it out of the sample. So what that does is it removes our business bias. So if Moneris had a blowout year and we grew our merchant count by 10%, the results that we share to our clients and publicly, it would not be affected because we would not be counting those new merchants that came aboard.
As you say, would be comp store sales kind of type measure. Fantastic.
That's exactly what it is.
Well, let's get into it. We've been teasing it often enough. Let's get right into it. And I wanted to start with you guys did some pre-work in terms of intentions. You sent me a couple of charts, but let's spend a little bit of time on what your expectations were based on trends and what you saw last year, and then we can get into what actually happened. But what were your expectations heading into the holiday and the Black Friday period?
Yeah, we conducted a survey, and we commissioned it via Angus Reid. So what we did is we designed a series of questions, all relating around holiday spending. And the big one that we asked was very simple, and this was a consumer survey. Do you intend to spend more than last year on holiday spending, or do you intend to spend less than last year on holiday spending? And do you intend to spend the same? And only 7% of respondents to that survey indicated that they were going to be spending more than last year. 43% said they would be spending less than last year, and that was a survey that we conducted at the beginning of November.
The beginning of November, so very, very, very close in. And just so I know, the question you were asking, was it overall holiday spending, gift giving? Did you make any distinction around that?
No distinction, just holiday spending.
Okay, holiday spending, and was that goods and services, like what you'd eat, go to restaurants, buy goods? Was there any distinction about that, or was it just very high level?
No distinction.
No distinction. Okay.
It was holiday spending, broadly speaking, and you're bang on, right? Like holiday spending could be, that family dinner out, the week before Christmas to your local pub, right? Like it could be that too. But the reason we kept it broad is that we, like Black Friday, for example, that's a broad sale, right? You've got hotels offering Black Friday deals. You've got car shops offering Black Friday deals. You have apparel stores offering Black Friday deals. So we kept it broad intentionally, and what we saw was a fairly consistent response from across the country on that. So we broke that down by province, and no province exceeded single digits on we will be spending more than last year. It the lowest Alberta came in with 5% of respondents saying they would spend more than last year. That was the lowest level. The highest level was Ontario with 9% saying that they would spend more than last year. So very small proportion right across the country, and all of Canada in aggregate was 7% saying that they would spend more than last year.
Okay.
And respondents saying that they would spend less than last year. So in aggregate in Canada, it was 43% that said they would be spending less. In Alberta, notably, just 5% say that they would be spending more. 53% said that they would be spending less than last year. And looks like in Saskatchewan, it was 30% of respondents said that they would be spending less than last year, and that was the smallest group, but still significant, like 30%.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, let's turn our minds to what actually happened. It's a busy week for you guys in the post-holiday. Now, I want to get some other definitions clear. When we talk Black Friday, often I talk to retailers who, and sometimes they have different definitions. I mean, there's the day, the Friday, and then there is the event, which, some call it the big 5 days. Others say, like it's 2 weeks. So when you talk Black Friday results, what are you talking?
Well, we talk about the day itself, not Black Friday week, and there's a reason for that. And it's really in the spirit of what we just talked about with same-store methodology, is that not all retailers offer Black Friday deals. Most do, but not all of them. Whereas Black Friday, of course, not everybody offers Black Friday deals, but most retailers have skin in the game on Black Friday. So that's why we look specifically at Black Friday, because what we want to do is we want to isolate the consumer, right? We want to isolate the consumer, not the merchant. In order to pull consumer insights out of that, we have to break that down into a very finite day. So that is Black Friday, and what we saw this year was a 4% decline in Black Friday spend in 2025 versus Black Friday spend in 2024. Okay,
so for an added dose of clarity, if we haven't already hit everybody over the head with it, this is Friday, the 28th of November. We're talking about starting at midnight, ending at 11:59 or whatever, to be exceedingly precise. And so you measure a couple things. So right there, you've given us some stats about year over year. You also measure week over week, which I always thought was a very interesting approach. In other words, the Friday prior versus the Friday. So, because that gives you a sense of I think that gives you a sense of how many people are, how many people get active on the actual day versus the prior Friday, which would have been the 21st. Talk about those numbers for a bit.
Yeah, so we look at that. You're bang on, and we look at that as how relevant is the event, and how well does that opportunity pull consumers either out of their houses or onto their laptops, phones, whatever, to make a purchase. And what we saw is week over week, so Black Friday versus the Friday prior, consumer spend was up 25%. Okay. So Black Friday definitely still, getting the job done. Yeah. Last year it was a 29% increase Friday over Friday. So a bit of a decline there from 29%. But 25% is significant. So does Black Friday work? Yes, 100%. But when you look at the year over year, so Black Friday 2025 versus Black Friday 2024, it's a 4% decline there.
Right. We'll be right back right after these messages. The Voice of Retail is brought to you by Hale, the partner behind some of the fastest growing DTC and retail brands in North America. Hale is recognized for senior teams who cut out the noise and keep their focus on what matters most: growth. Their approach is based on outcomes, not hours. They are selective with who they partner with, bringing speed, accountability, and a clear strategy to every engagement. Paid media, content, performance, all of it connects directly to real results. That's why brands like A6 Sage and Orange Theory choose Hail to help them scale. Learn more at wearehail.com. Right. Now, what we don't know about that number, but can surmise, it could be that people shopped earlier because retailers, for example, might have been more aggressive than last year on the Monday of the week. But it's not a bad assumption to say that that's a pretty good directionally indication of activity on that day versus prior year in terms of intent, right?
Yeah, at Moneris, we leave it open-ended, right?
Yeah.
Like we provide the data. We don't necessarily reach conclusions on the data. We rely, we let the researchers and what have you. That's the interpretation of the data is up to the user, right? We present the data as these are transactions. They're irrefutable. Either the transactions happened or they didn't. And a 4% decline, right? Like you're saying, it may have been stretched over
more days.
Black Friday, the completely reasonable assumption.
Yeah.
We believe, one thing that, we draw our attention to is the survey that we did prior, right? 1 month prior saying, what are your intentions? And when we saw, when we see 6 times as many people saying they were going to spend less than last year versus people saying that they were going to spend more than last year, that reasonably correlates. The other thing to keep in mind, and I, this is my own thought. There was research that was released today from Dalhousie University. It was the agri-food. The agri-food folks, government, right?
Yep.
And they predict that the average Canadian will spend $1,000 more next year on groceries. And that's not because they've got bigger appetites. That is the inflationary effect in the grocery segment. And I use that as an example of the pressures on Canadians at this moment on their dollars and the money that they have to spend. And you have discretionary spending as a proportion of your budget.
Yeah.
And holiday spending is highly discretionary. It's almost like restaurant spend, right? Like when you go to a restaurant, you can choose whether or not to have 2 rounds of drinks. You can choose whether to have an appetizer. You can choose whether to have that $35 steak or the $16 hamburger, right? Highly discretionary. And during the holidays, it's highly discretionary how generous you are with your family and friends. And generosity is, I don't mean to say that, well, either you be a Scrooge or you be generous,
right.
But it has to be within your budget.
Yeah.
And if this Dalhousie, report that suggests that people are going to spend $1,000 more next year on groceries, if that's any indication of the pressures that are facing each and every Canadian, then the fact that we see a 4% pullback on Black Friday spend
kind of correlates. Yeah, kind of correlates, right? Yeah. Like the economists would call it a crowding out phenomenon, right? If I'm spending more to feed the family, I have a little bit less to spend for presents under the tree.
Right. It doesn't mean I love my wife any less because I'm spending 20% less on her. I mean, that's just at least I hope not, right?
I hope you're not messaging it that way. That's what I have to say.
Right, but it's Canadians have had to make some really difficult decisions in the last few years. Some more difficult than others.
Yep.
And holiday spend is definitely a lever that the Canadians seem to be pulling.
Last question for you, and thank you again for your time. Great insights. Is you and I have kind of had a running bet over the years about which would be the biggest retail day of the year, and I was always a big proponent that thanks to the groceries and stocking up for the Christmas meal, that it was typically like the Saturday before Christmas. But last year you bet me a pint that it would basically you thought it was going to be Black Friday. What's your bet this year?
I tend to think it's going to be Black Friday again, and here's why. Is last year Black Friday was the king of the castle, and that's because in part Christmas landed on a Wednesday last year, so that was a full 2 days, like 48 hours between the last weekend shopping opportunity and Christmas Day. So that's a significant amount of time. This year, Christmas is on a Thursday, so you have even more time between the last weekend shopping opportunity and Christmas. So what you're doing is you're when that happens, the effect of weekend shopping
it's spread out, right?
It's spread out. It's less of a demand. So I tend to think that Black Friday will probably get it done again this year. Next year, if I'm not an expert on the Gregorian calendar, you might have to talk to somebody else.
I think Christmas is on the 25th. That's what I know next year. Beyond that, I don't know too much.
And I think it might be on Friday next year if it goes day by day. So if that happens, then that'll
more of
be
the same.
A full 4 days.
More of the same.
That's right.
Cool. Well, listen, Sean, thanks so much for joining me on the pod. Great insights, kind of a flash report that everyone is looking to get, and a great set of data, and you explain it so clearly. If people want to get more insights beyond the holidays and get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Well, we've got the website, microsite off the Moneris website. So dataservices.moneris.com. If anybody wants to reach out, get in touch with me directly, Sean.McCormick@Moneris.com, or reach out on LinkedIn too.
Yeah, I was going to say
social's going to be big, I think. One day.
Yeah, that was a bold prediction. Another bold prediction. This AI could be something one day. All right. Listen, Sean, thanks. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks again, as I said, for joining me on the pod, and I wish you all the best for the holidays, you and the fam.
Same to you, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, follow on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically each week. And be sure and check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast with Steve Dennis and the Global E-Commerce Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, Senior Retail Advisor, Keynote Speaker. If you want more content or to chat, follow me on LinkedIn. Safe travels, everyone.